Welcome back to Untold Revenge Files. Today, the story you're about to hear takes place in Frost Hills, Minnesota. My name is Nora Callahan. I'm 18 years old, and the night I'm about to tell you about should have been the last night of my life. Some birthdays you celebrate. Some you survive. And some birthdays teach you exactly who your family really is, and what they're capable of doing to you when you're no longer useful to them. I grew up in a beautiful two-story house with white shutters and a perfectly manicured lawn. From the outside, we looked like any other happy family. My mother, Valerie, remarried when I was 11, and Gerald became my stepfather. He brought along his son, Kyle, who was 2 years older than me. On paper, we were the picture of suburban blending. In reality, I was the problem that came with the package, the inconvenient reminder of my mother's first marriage, and the trust fund my biological father left behind when he passed away. See, my dad died when I was 9. Car accident. Black ice on a highway. He was a good man, a financial planner who built everything carefully. Before he passed, he'd set up a trust in my name, substantial enough that it would give me a real start in life. The catch? I couldn't touch it until I turned 18. And neither could anyone else. For 7 years, I watched my mother and Gerald count down the days. Not to celebrate my adulthood, not to wish me well, but because they believed that once I turned 18, they could convince me or coerce me into sharing what was legally mine. I tried so hard to earn my place in that house. I cooked, I cleaned, I stayed out of Kyle's way when he took over my bedroom and I was moved to the basement. I got straight A's. I worked part-time at a coffee shop and handed over half my paychecks for room and board. I made myself small, invisible, useful. It was never enough. Before I tell you exactly what my mother did next, tell me, what time is it where you are right now and where are you watching from? I'm really curious to see how far this story will travel. The night of my 18th birthday started quietly. No cake, no candles. I hadn't expected any. What I hadn't expected was what happened at exactly 9:47 p.m. I was standing in the entryway, having just come in from the cold, when my mother appeared in the hallway. She was wearing her silk robe. Her arms were crossed, and behind her stood Gerald, his face completely blank. "You're 18 now," she said. Her voice was flat, clinical. "Which means you're no longer my responsibility." My stomach dropped. "Mom, what are you—" She walked toward me with purpose. I'll never forget the way her hand felt against my chest when she shoved me. One hard push. I stumbled backward, and suddenly I was outside. The screen door slammed, the deadbolt clicked. Through the frosted glass, I could see Gerald watching. Just watching. He didn't move, didn't speak. My backpack came flying out a moment later, tossed through the side door like garbage. It landed in the snow at my feet. "Mom!" I pounded on the door. "Mom, please! It's freezing out here!" Nothing. The porch light went dark. The temperature that night was -12 degrees. The wind chill made it feel like -30. I was wearing a hoodie, jeans, and sneakers. My coat was inside. My phone was dead, and I had exactly $152 in my pocket. Birthday money I'd saved from my last 3 paychecks. The snow was coming down sideways. Every breath burned my lungs. My fingers were already going numb. I knew I couldn't just stand there. Hypothermia doesn't care about how unfair your life is. It doesn't wait for you to process your trauma. So I started walking. There was an old garden shed 3 blocks away, tucked behind an abandoned property. I'd found it months ago during one of the nights when home felt too suffocating to bear. I'd slept there twice before, just a few hours at a time. It wasn't safe, but it was shelter. It had a broken lock and enough space to curl up out of the wind. That's where I was headed when she grabbed me. A woman's hand closed around my wrist, tight, almost painfully tight. I spun around, heart pounding, ready to fight. But what I saw stopped me cold. She was older, maybe 60, wrapped in layers of mismatched clothing. Her face was weathered, her eyes sharp and urgent. I'd seen her before, sleeping near the bus station. People called her Miss Edna. Most people walked past her like she was invisible. She leaned in close, her breath forming clouds between us. "Do not sleep in that shed tonight," she said. Her voice was low and fierce. "Get a hotel room. Use whatever money you have. If you go back there, you won't wake up." I stared at her, confused, frightened. "What? How do you—" "Just listen to me." She squeezed my wrist harder. "Trust me, please." I didn't understand. I couldn't understand. But something in her eyes, something desperate and knowing, made me listen. I walked past the shed and kept going until I found the Pinewood Motor Lodge 2 miles down the road. I paid $78 for a room that smelled like mildew and old cigarettes. I locked the door, pushed a chair under the handle, and sat in the corner shaking until morning. I had no idea that what Miss Edna had just saved me from would change everything. I didn't sleep that night, not really. I sat on the edge of that stained mattress, wrapped in a thin motel blanket, listening to the wind howl against the window. My mind kept circling back to the same questions. Why had my mother done this? Why tonight? Why now? And most haunting of all, how had Miss Edna known about the shed? When morning finally came, the snow had stopped. The world outside was blindingly white, buried under nearly 2 feet of fresh powder. I had $74 left, no phone charger, and nowhere to go. I should have felt hopeless. Instead, I felt something else rising in my chest, something sharp and clear. Anger. I walked back toward the bus station, hoping to find Miss Edna. I needed answers. I needed to understand what she'd meant, why she'd stopped me, what she knew that I didn't. She was sitting on an overturned crate near the station's back entrance, drinking coffee from a paper cup. When she saw me, her face softened with something that looked like relief. "You listened," she said quietly. "Good girl." I sat down beside her, not caring about the cold concrete beneath me. "How did you know? About the shed?" She reached into her coat and pulled out a small device, a trail camera, the kind hunters use to monitor wildlife. "I set these up around spots where I sleep sometimes, to keep myself safe. Last night, after you got thrown out, I checked the footage." My heart started pounding. "Footage of what?" She turned the camera's small screen toward me. The image was grainy, shot in night vision, but it was clear enough. It showed Kyle, my stepbrother, approaching the garden shed. He was carrying a shovel. In the video, he began packing wet snow against the door, layer after layer, sealing it shut from the outside. Then he walked away, checking over his shoulder to make sure no one was watching. My entire body went cold in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature. "He was sealing it," I whispered. "Like a tomb." Miss Edna nodded slowly. "If you'd slept in there, you wouldn't have been able to push the door open. And in that cold, with no one knowing where you were—" She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I sat there, frozen, as the reality sank in. This wasn't just an eviction. This was a setup. They hadn't just wanted me gone. They wanted me dead. My trust fund unlocked at 18. If something happened to me, if I disappeared, if I died before I could claim it, who would inherit it then? My mother. I felt like I was going to be sick. My own mother. The woman who had carried me, raised me, tucked me in at night when I was small. She had orchestrated this. She had planned my death to coincide with my birthday, probably hoping the blizzard would be blamed, that I'd be found frozen in some alley, and she could play the grieving mother while cashing in on what my father had left me. "Nora," Miss Edna's voice cut through my spiral, "you're still in danger. You understand that, right? If they realize you survived, they'll try something else. You need to move fast." She was right. I knew she was right. "What do I do?" My voice came out smaller than I wanted it to. "You go to the police," she said firmly. "And then you go straight to whatever bank holds that trust. You beat them to the narrative. You claim what's yours before they can spin the story against you." I looked at her, this woman whose society had discarded, who slept on streets and survived on scraps, and saw more wisdom, more strength, more humanity than I'd ever seen in my own family. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. She smiled, but it was sad. "Because someone should have helped me once, and no one did. I'm not letting that happen to you." I made my choice in that moment. I wasn't going to disappear. I wasn't going to let them win. I was going to fight back with the only weapons I had, the truth and the evidence to prove it. Miss Edna gave me the trail camera footage. I borrowed a charger from the motel clerk and powered up my phone. Then I walked into the Frost Hills Police Department and told them everything. The detective who took my statement was a woman named Officer Patricia Reyes. She was calm, thorough, and, most importantly, she believed me. When I showed her the footage, when I explained the timeline, when I told her about the trust fund and the motive, something shifted in her expression. "Stay here," she said. "I'm going to make some calls." 2 hours later, I was sitting in the lobby of Summit Valley Bank, where my father's trust had been held for the past 9 years. The bank manager, a man named Mr. Howard Chin, reviewed my documents, verified my identity, and confirmed what I'd hoped. The trust was mine. Completely and legally mine, and my mother had no claim to it. "She tried to call this morning," Mr. Chin admitted, looking uncomfortable. "She said you'd had a mental health crisis and that she needed emergency access to the account for your care. I told her I couldn't discuss it without your presence." My blood ran cold. She was already trying to paint me as unstable, already trying to manipulate the narrative. But I had gotten there first. I claimed every dollar. I froze any access she might have had to auxiliary accounts my father had set up. And buried in the trust documents, I found something I hadn't known about, a clause my father had written, a protection clause. If there was ever evidence of malfeasance or attempt to harm the beneficiary for financial gain, a portion of the trust could be directed toward legal prosecution of the responsible parties. My father had protected me, even from beyond the grave. For the first time in 18 years, I wasn't alone. The weeks that followed were a blur of police interviews, legal paperwork, and sleepless nights in motel rooms I paid for myself. But for the first time in my life, I was making my own choices. I was building something that belonged to me. The investigation moved faster than I expected. Officer Reyes was relentless. The trail camera footage was just the beginning. When they searched the shed, they found Kyle's fingerprints on the shovel. They found text messages on his phone from my mother sent that same night. "Is it done? Make sure she can't get out." There it was, in writing, my mother's words, her instructions, her intent. Gerald, my stepfather, tried to claim ignorance, said he didn't know anything, but phone records showed he'd been on a call with Kyle moments before the shed was sealed. His silence on the porch that night wasn't passivity. It was complicity. They were arrested on charges of attempted murder, conspiracy, and fraud. Bail was set high, and because of the clause in my father's trust, the legal fees to prosecute them didn't come from taxpayers. They came from the very money they'd tried to steal. Poetic, isn't it? By the time the snow started to melt, I had moved into a small studio apartment on the east side of the city. It wasn't much. 400 square feet with a radiator that clanked and a window that faced a brick wall. But it was mine. Every corner of it was safe. Every lock answered to me. I used part of the trust to enroll in community college, accounting of all things. My father would have loved that. I got a part-time job at a bookstore downtown. Nothing glamorous, but the owner was kind and the work was quiet. Here's an engagement question for you. Have you ever started over completely, left everything familiar behind and built something new from scratch? What did you learn about yourself in the process? Slowly, I started to build a life. Not the life my mother had planned for me, controlled and contingent on her approval. A real life. I made friends, other students, co-workers, a neighbor named Delia who was 73 and made the best banana bread I'd ever tasted. She'd lost her own daughter to an overdose years ago and treated me like family without ever asking for anything in return. And Miss Edna, I never forgot her. I went back to the bus station looking for her about a month after I moved into my apartment. She wasn't there. No one had seen her in weeks. For a while, I was terrified something had happened to her, that the cold had claimed her the way it nearly claimed me. But 3 months later, I got a letter forwarded through the police department. It was from a shelter in St. Paul. "I'm inside now," she wrote. "Got into a program. They're helping me get back on my feet. I heard about what happened with your family. I'm proud of you, sweetheart. You did what I wished I'd done 40 years ago. Don't ever let anyone make you small again." I cried for an hour after reading that. Good tears, the kind that wash things clean. Meanwhile, word about my family's crimes spread through Frost Hills like wildfire. It's a small community. Everyone knew Valerie and Gerald, the well-dressed couple with the beautiful house and the charming stepson, the respected PTA member and the man who coached youth basketball. Watching their masks crumble was almost surreal. Neighbors stopped speaking to them. Kyle's friends distanced themselves. The church they attended released a statement expressing deep concern and quietly removed Gerald from his leadership role. My mother tried to fight it. She hired a lawyer who attempted to argue that I had fabricated the evidence, that I was a troubled teenager seeking revenge for being fairly disciplined. But the text messages didn't lie. The fingerprints didn't lie. The timeline didn't lie. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Kyle received 8 years for attempted murder and conspiracy. Gerald got 6 years for conspiracy and accessory charges. And my mother, the woman who had brought me into this world and then tried to take me out of it, was sentenced to 12 years. At the sentencing, she looked at me from across the courtroom. Her eyes were hollow. Her face was thin. She mouthed something. I think it was, "How could you?" I didn't respond. I just looked back at her, steady and calm. How could I? How could I tell the truth? How could I refuse to die quietly? The real question was, how could she? Knowing they were behind bars should have felt triumphant, like victory, like revenge. Instead, it felt like exhaling after holding my breath for 18 years. It felt like peace. 2 years passed. I finished my associate degree with honors and transferred to a 4-year university. I was studying financial planning now, following in my father's footsteps, honoring the protection he'd built for me. I had an internship at a small firm, a circle of friends who knew my story and loved me anyway, and an apartment with actual furniture. Delia, my elderly neighbor, had become something like a grandmother to me. Miss Edna, she'd asked me to call her, had graduated from her program and now worked at the very shelter that had taken her in. We had dinner together every month. I was healing. Not perfectly, never perfectly, but steadily. The nightmares came less frequently. The panic when I heard deadbolts click had faded. I was learning to trust again, slowly and carefully. And then my mother reached out. The letter arrived on a Tuesday afternoon. Plain white envelope, prison return address. I stared at it for 20 minutes before I opened it. "Nora," it began, "I know you probably hate me. You have every right to. I've had a lot of time to think in here, and I've realized some things about myself that I'm not proud of. Gerald has filed for divorce. Kyle doesn't speak to me anymore. I have no one. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I don't deserve it, but I need to know if there's any chance you might visit, just once. I need to see your face and tell you I'm sorry. I'm still your mother. That has to count for something. Please, Valerie." I read the letter 3 times. The first time I felt the old guilt rising, the trained response, the need to fix things, to smooth things over, to be the good daughter who forgave and forgot. The second time, I noticed what was missing. No acknowledgement of what she'd actually done. No acceptance of responsibility beyond vague things I'm not proud of. The word sorry appeared once, buried in a request for contact. The third time, I understood. She wasn't asking for reconciliation. She was asking for access, for comfort in her discomfort, for me to ease her loneliness the way I'd always eased her burdens. Some patterns, it seemed, didn't break, even from behind bars. I sat with the letter for a week. I talked to my therapist about it. I asked Delia what she thought. I prayed about it in my own way, asking my father for guidance. And then I wrote back. "Valerie," I began. I couldn't call her Mom. Not anymore. "I received your letter. I hope you find the healing you're looking for during this time. I genuinely wish you peace and growth as you reflect on the choices that brought you here. I am not able to visit. I am not able to offer the reconciliation you're seeking. What happened on my 18th birthday was not a mistake or a misunderstanding. It was a plan to end my life. I'm choosing to protect the life that was almost taken from me. You still have other options for support. Kyle may come around in time. Gerald's children from his first marriage may choose to maintain contact. I did not take everything from you. I just stopped letting you take everything from me. I wish you well from a distance. Nora. I didn't hear back. I didn't expect to. So here's my final question for you. If you were standing where I am now, with a mother who tried to take your life asking you for comfort and connection, would you open that door and call it forgiveness? Or would you protect the peace you've built and call it self-respect? There's no wrong answer. Only your answer. I've learned something in the 2 years since that blizzard. Love doesn't automatically mean access. Forgiveness, if it ever comes, doesn't require reunion. Family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up when the world goes dark and help you find your way forward. My father protected me from beyond the grave. Miss Edna protected me on a frozen corner with nothing but her instincts and a trail camera. Delia protects me now with banana bread and Wednesday dinners and the steady presence of someone who asks for nothing but my company. That's family. That's love. My mother gave birth to me. She raised me. She also tried to kill me for money. Both things are true. I can hold both without letting either one define me. If you're watching this and you've been through something similar, if someone who should have protected you became the person you needed protection from, I want you to know, you're not crazy. You're not ungrateful. You're not wrong for walking away. Some people don't deserve second chances. And giving yourself the life you deserve isn't revenge. It's justice. It's survival. It's peace. And the only reason I lived long enough to find it was because one stranger on a frozen corner grabbed my wrist and told me not to go back. Sometimes the family that saves you isn't the one you were born into. Sometimes it's the one that finds you in the storm. And that's where Nora's story ends. Not with revenge, but with peace. Not with bitterness, but with boundaries. She didn't destroy her mother. She simply refused to let her mother destroy her. If this story touched something inside you, if it reminded you of your own battles, your own survival, your own journey toward peace, drop a comment below. Tell me, what would you have done? Would you have written back? Would you have visited? Or would you have protected your peace at all costs? Your stories matter too, and sometimes sharing them is the first step toward healing. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button and tap the bell so you never miss another story. We post every week, and trust me, next week's story, it's going to hit even harder. Until then, stay strong, set your boundaries, and never let anyone make you feel guilty for surviving. This is Revenge Red, and I'll see you in the next one.